Shalom. Welcome to Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue. This is our midweek study that we do with you online. Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue is in Fort Myers, Florida. We would love to fellowship and worship with you if you're interested. We are open for in-person worship and services. So if you're interested in that and if you have any questions for that, by all means contact us. You'll find my email address in the description below, and you will also find a place to contact us in the comments. Either one of those is fine. If you would like to discuss this video, we enjoy the discussions. If you want to reach out to us through comments or through email, we would like that. And the last thing that I will say is that if you would like to subscribe to this channel, this YouTube channel, then you will get notifications for the new videos that get published. We publish our online Shabbat services on Saturdays, and we publish, of course, these studies and then Revelation studies and things like this. So if you subscribe, then you'll get notifications, and you can fellowship and worship with us that way. Likewise, if you're interested in supporting this ministry, of course, we are grateful for all of your support. This ministry is wholly supported by your offerings and gifts. So if you would like to do that, we would be very grateful for your partnership and to partner with you in the work of the kingdom of Adonai during these days. Right, without further delay, these midweek Torah studies are recorded live for you and then uploaded to YouTube, and you can view them there if you'd like. If you have any comments or discussion, of course, please reach out to us and let us know. This week we are in Parshat Shlach Lecha, Parshat 37 in the reading order. Shlach Lecha, meaning send on your behalf. This is from Bemidbar, Numbers, chapter 13 through chapter 15, verse 41. We'll begin with a summary. These summaries that we are using right now are provided by Or Samech International, which is an international yeshiva and teaching ministry. You can find their stuff online. They have a lot of good material and a lot of good content. So we will begin with a summary. In this parsha, at the insistence of the children of Israel and with Adonai's permission, Moses sends 12 scouts, one from each tribe, to investigate the land, Canaan. Moses changes Hoshea's name to Yehoshua, Hosea to Joshua in English. They return 40 days later carrying unusually large fruit. When 10 of the 12 scouts state that the people in Canaan are as formidable as the fruit, the men are discouraged. Caleb and Yehoshua, Caleb and Joshua, the only two scouts still in favor of the invasion, try to bolster the spirit of the people. The nation, however, decides that the land is not worth the potential risks, and instead they demand a return to Egypt. Adonai is angered by this attitude and is eventually placated by Moses' fervent prayers. However, he declares that the nation must remain in the desert for 40 years until the men who wept at the false report of the scouts pass away. So part of the people of Israel were regretful and remorseful at what they had done, and so they began an invasion of the land based on Adonai's original instructions. Moses warns them not to proceed, but they fail to heed the warnings, and they are massacred. Adonai instructs Moses concerning the offerings that will be made when Bnei Israel will fully enter the land of Israel. The people are commanded to remove challah, a donation for the Kohanim, from their dough. The laws for an offering after an inadvertent sin for an individual person or group are given and explained. However, should someone blaspheme against Adonai and be unrepentant, he will be cut off spiritually from his people. One man is found gathering wood on public property in violation of the Shabbat and is put to death. The laws of tzitzit are taught, and twice a day we recite this section of the Parsha because it reminds us of our Exodus. Okay, so that concludes the summary for the current Parsha. Let's see. The first thing I want to do is I want to compare this Parsha, which again we're dealing with the spies that were sent into the land. I want to compare this Parsha to Devarim, chapter 1. Devarim chapter 1 is Moses' retelling of the events. And so we get a narrative here, and it's an echo of the narrative in our current parsha. A couple excerpts from this, starting verse 21. Look, Adonai has placed the land before you. Go up, take possession. Verse 22, you approached me, every one of you, and said, let's send men ahead of us to explore the country for us and bring back word concerning what route we should use, etc. The idea seemed good to me, so I took 12 of your men, one from each tribe. Verse 26, but you would not go up. Instead, you rebelled against the order of Adonai. This is after, of course, the report from the spies. In your tents you complained. It's because Adonai hated us that he has brought us out of the land of Egypt only to hand us over to the Emori to destroy us. And so on. So the people became angry, and then Adonai became angry with them, and so on. Notice in this version of the events, the narrative here is very much you approached me. This was your idea. In the Bamidbar narrative, in the narrative in Numbers, it says this, that Adonai instructed them to send in men to search out the land. In Devarim, it says, let us send men ahead of us. In Devarim, in Deuteronomy, it could have been 2 to 3 men. In Bamidbar, in Numbers, it's 12 men, one from each tribe. Except for it's not exactly 12 men, one from each tribe. Let's read through it and see. Starting in our Parshat, verse 4 of chapter 13 here. So verse 4 in the current chapter 13. All right, let's read. From the tribe of Reuben, from the tribe of Simon, from the tribe of Judah, from the tribe of Issachar, from the tribe of Ephraim, from the tribe of Benjamin, from the tribe of Zebulun, from the tribe of Joseph, the tribe of Dan, the tribe of Asher, tribe of Naphtali, and the tribe of Gad. What's missing here? In fact, what's interesting is here from the tribe of Joseph, that is from the tribe of Manasseh. And there we've got one of the clues, and then earlier in the list we've got Ephraim. So we concluded Ephraim, and we included Joseph/Manasseh. So what's missing? If we've only got 12 tribes here, what's missing? Well, one of the tribes that's missing is the tribe of Levi. Why would the tribe of Levi be left out? Because Levi does not get an apportionment of the land. The Levites do not get tribal inheritance in the land. In Devarim, we have this this sort of emphasis on Adonai's instructions with these precise representatives of these precise tribes. Another aspect of this, just again, we're comparing, contrasting the two passages here. From Deuteronomy chapter 1 and, of course, our current Parsha, which is Numbers chapter 13. Adonai, it says in the text here, in Deuteronomy, it says, Veyachparu lanu et ha'aretz. Let them search out the land. Some commentators ascribe a militaristic leaning in the verb lachparu. But it's interesting to note that the lachparu is a different verb than you see in the current Parsha. Okay, so those of you who don't have the Hebrew in front of you, in Deuteronomy, we have a different Hebrew verb than we have in Numbers. The verb in Numbers is ascribed to have militaristic leanings. So it would be very much, spying out the land or scouting out the land. But the other reference that we have in Bamidbar Numbers, in our current Parsha, chapter 13, we have this, Latur ha'aretz. And that is translated often as reconnoitered the land or scouted out the land. But the root of Latur ha'aretz, the Latur, is not militaristic. In fact, it means to wander. Combined with the obvious exclusion of the tribe of Levi, we come up with a decidedly unspycraft mission that's being referred to here in the book of Numbers. It wouldn't surprise me if they bought the grapes from a roadside stand along the way, because they weren't going in to spy it out and to prepare for conquering it. Contrast this with another time when the people sent in spies in order to prepare for conquering. What's another time when this happened in the text? Not in the Torah, but in the book of Joshua. This time before the attack on Jericho, under Joshua chapter 2, which is incidentally this week's Haftorah portion, Joshua chapter 2. Yehoshua the son of Nun secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim with these instructions: go inspect the land in Jericho. The king of Jericho was told about it. Tonight some men from Israel came here to reconnoiter the land. And so the woman brought them up on the roof and hid them under some stalks of flax she had spread out there. And so the people were searching for them, and these spies had to hide. And then they were let down through a basket. Were they let down in a window? I thought they were let down in a window. I don't see it here right now, but they definitely had to sneak away, head up for the hills, and hide until the pursuers quit pursuing them and searching for them, and they left. And so they came back, and then a few days later they reported in to Joshua and prepared for the conquering of Jericho. Notice how profoundly different that narrative is. This narrative around Jericho is a narrative of a people preparing to conquer the land. Occasionally we get something in human behavior which some people call a cognitive dissonance. It's when you think you did something, but you actually did something else. It's, I'm sure I put my bank card back in my wallet after I went to the store. I actually remember doing it. But the truth of the matter is, the cashier at the grocery store still has my bank card. The people of Israel thought they were preparing to conquer, when really what they were doing is they were preparing to be defeated. The grumbling had already begun. We have 3 parshas in succession with terrible judgments and terrible stumbles and failures on behalf of the people of Israel. We have this failure, then we have the Korach rebellion, the death of Miriam, Balak, the deception of the people. The people were really on a negative trajectory here. When the 12 men went into the land, they went from the north to the south. Again, the people of Israel were at the south corner. If they were going to survey the land in order to conquer it, they would have gone in at the south and surveyed the immediate cities so that you could get a foothold in the land. But instead, they went from the north to south. What does it look like they're doing? It looks like a walkabout. It looks like a tourist trick. No, what they were doing is they were preparing not to conquer, but to divide up the land. They were preparing, it was like a survey party to divide up the land. And that was their goal. And of course they're going to encounter some hostility. And so there is a defensive posture, but that was their goal, was to go in and prepare for the division of the land. That's how I read the text anyway. So what is happening here in our parsha and in consideration of the Deuteronomy passage? There are 2 ideas competing for space in the hearts and minds of people. The spies were sent in for an invasion that they really don't have the heart for. That is, they went in, but they didn't really believe that they could accomplish this invasion. And the other one is that the survey team, the spies, were sent in to divide up the land. Rabbi Yaakov Maiden, God sends his princes in order to first stake a first claim to the land. Or as Rabbi Maiden teaches and suggests, to divide up each tribe's portion of the land, thus explaining why Levi didn't go in to this survey. In the 4 chapters leading up to our parsha, we have this: the celebration of the Pesach in chapter 9, descriptions of the cloud of glory, chapter 9, description of their travels, chapter 10, the interaction with Yitro, chapter 10, the mention of man and quail, chapter 11, the introduction of support for Moshe's leadership, chapter 11, the ultimate statement about Moses' who he is as a special prophet in chapter 12. All these sections, this trajectory, this sort of journey in the text here, are an echo of the narrative between the time that they left Egypt and the time that they got to the Mount Horeb in the Sinai desert, Mount Sinai. Even all the way to the 40 days of divine purpose, the 40 days when Moses went up on the mountain, went up to bring back the words of Adonai for them to take in. And likewise, the spies went up into the land and brought back some of the produce of the land. So you see those 40 days bringing something back, Moses and the spies. It's like a parallel. And then, of course, when Moses comes down after the 40 days, what do we see? We see that the people of Israel have stumbled in sin. And what do we see here at the end of these 40 days when the spies spy out the land? Is again, the people are in sin. All right. When the spies reported the strength of the local inhabitants, the people wept. And they complained again about having left Egypt. And then they utter these words, "Let us appoint a captain and return to Egypt." Rabbi Yitzhak Yat Shalom writes of three covenants. And this is a way of understanding this section of the scripture, that there are three covenants that are being described here. When the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was dedicated, we entered into an immediate intimacy with the Shekhinah, the Shekinah, the glory of Adonai. This is similar to our closeness in relationship to Adonai in the garden, just as Adonai described as walking in the garden from Bereshit chapter 3. Similarly, Adonai promises, "I will place my presence, my sanctuary among you, and I will walk among you." We see this in Leviticus chapter 26. In other words, the promise of the Mishkan is a return to the close relationship which we enjoyed with Adonai in the times previous, perhaps in the time of the garden. So we'll call this the Brit Mishkan. Again, this is a layout that Rabbi Yitzhak Yat Shalom writes of. We'll call this the Brit Mishkan. That's the first Brit, the first covenant, if you will. "They will make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell among them," and it says in Shemot, Exodus chapter 25. Okay, moving on. The second layer, the second level of a covenant here is what Rabbi Yat Shalom describes as the Brit Sinai. It's a second, less intense relationship, largely described and characterized by the obedience of the covenants, regulations, rules. The covenant involves more than just fulfilling the mitzvot and avoiding prohibitions. It does involve a unique relationship, as described. It says this in Shemot, chapter 19. "Now therefore, if you obey my voice, keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine. You shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel." So that would be the second, the Brit Sinai. According to Rabbi Yat Shalom, the last one is the Brit Avot, the covenant of the fathers. A final, much less intense, much less closeness relationship between the children of Israel and the presence of Adonai is known as the Brit Avot, a covenant with the patriarchs. The covenants and promises that Adonai made with Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov are binding for all time and give us the land and the populous and a populous people. This is the expression of the covenant with the fathers, that all this is based not on the presence of the Shekhinah, the glory of Adonai. It is based not on the rules and regulations and their obedience and fulfillment thereof. It is based rather than just solely on the fact that Adonai knew my fathers. Adonai knows my fathers, therefore I am my father's son, therefore surely you know me a little bit, somehow, somewhere. All right. this is the expression of conquest under the Brit Mishkan. Remember from the previous parsha, arise, Adonai, let your enemies be scattered, let those who despise you flee from before you. I was able to talk about this last week and discuss the noons, the backwards noons in that passage. So this is the expression of conquest under the Brit Mishkan. Under the Brit Sinai, we have the complainers of Baalocha. Notice how the complainers are described, the Kemit Onanim. And again, you have two noons side by side. Adonai's judgment against them was to burn them. They were burned by the fire of his presence, the complainers. Where the Shekhinah becomes not a champion but an adversary. Note their victor, but not their victor, but rather a harsh master. Not their savior, but rather their judge. When do we see salvation becoming judgment? When does the gospel, which is a merciful salvation message, become a message of condemnation and a message of judgment? It's a very good question, and one that our modern times wrestles with, because modern sensibilities don't like the idea of a harsh and judgmental Adonai. And yet we know from instinct that surely some of this has to be allowed. There has to be some measure of judgment in the world, otherwise the world would just dissolve into chaos. What do we see when we see this salvation becoming judgment? We see this coming as a result of the sin of unbelief. From John, Yochanan chapter 3, for God did not send his Son into the world to judge the world, but rather so that through him the world might be saved. Those who trust in him are not judged. Those who do not trust have been judged already, in that they have not trusted in the one who is God's only and unique Son. Those who persist in unbelief, as it says in Romans 11. Rabbi at Sholem makes an interesting discussion. Once this level of intensity, the Brit Mishkan, was lost, we moved back to Brit Sinai, where we are promised to be victorious over our enemies and have a perpetual settlement in the land if we don't violate its sanctity and if we are willing to banish the idolatry. Coming into the land on those terms would have been the completion of the Sinaitic experience. In other words, this would have completed the covenant at Sinai. In order to match the stand at Sinai, the first enemy, in order to match the stand at Sinai, the first enemy, as indicated in our parsha, would have been Amalek, the Amalekites, whose destruction would have been an introduction to Messianic prophecy, the idea of the Messiah taking up and getting victory over his foes. This discussion makes a distinction between Israel under the Sinaitic covenant and Israel in relationship with the Shekhinah, the presence of Adonai via the Mishkan, the tabernacle, where we walk with Adonai. Which is a fascinating possibility, and one which we might share in a Yeshua kingdom paradigm, that the Torah and its prescriptions of rules and regulations were never meant to be the end of the law. They were meant to be superseded by the Shekhinah and by the Brit Mishkan. They were meant to be superseded by intimacy. From Corinthians chapter 6, 1 Corinthians, don't you know that your bodies are parts of the Messiah? If the person who is joined to the Lord is one spirit, don't you know that the body is a temple for the Ruach HaKodesh who lives inside you? We have this spirit that lives within us. 2 Corinthians chapter 1. Moreover, it is God who sets both us and you in firm union with the Messiah, as he puts his seal on us and gives us his spirit in our hearts. This is a guarantee for the future. We know this from this understanding, the current spiritual geometry. This is how the kingdom works. But in addition to this, we have all said, all that you said we will do in response to the covenant, in response to what we know to be the word of Adonai. So this is an interesting teaching, one that could be explored. Lastly, we've got the expression of the Brit Avot, the covenant of the fathers, expressed here by their intention to choose a captain and return to Egypt. The Brit Avot is the covenant of the fathers. What are the patterns of the fathers? The patriarchs. What do we remember from the patriarchs? If you look at that, we have the cycle. We go back to the model of the Brit Avot, the covenant with the patriarchs. We're not seeing permanence or settlement in the land. Rather, what we see is a cycle and a repetition of exile and return, which was begun by Abraham. He went from Haran to Israel, to Egypt, to Israel. Continued by Jacob went from Israel to Aram, and then back to Israel, and then into Egypt. His children went from Aram to Israel to Egypt. Once the people reverted to Brit Avot, once the people went back to their relationship with Adonai being more like a covenant of the fathers, they allowed for the possibility that this upcoming entrance into the land would not have the permanence that was promised at Sinai, but that the cycles of exile and return would remain our destiny until the final Redeemer would come. This, of course, is not what is wanted from Adonai. It says in the text that all the congregation raised a loud cry. The people wept that night. A couple thoughts on this idea of the sin of unbelief. Examples of unbelief in the Brit Chadashah, John chapter 3, would be a place to explore and study. This is the first real sort of breakdown and begins a progressive slide and descent into failure. This first in a series of missteps which become real tragedies. This one has the most profound consequence, the most profound judgment. The sin of unbelief is the most damaging. Some of those other narratives around, say, the Korach rebellion, Miriam's passing, and then Balak with their idolatries. There is something kind of profound about idol worship in comparison with other kinds of worship, whereby the idol worship is just a magnitude greater in its sense of consequence before Adonai. So drawing your attention for the last point now is going back to Bamidbar chapter 14, verse 21, as sure as I live, and that the whole earth is filled with the glory of Adonai, none of the people who saw my glory and the signs I did in Egypt and in the desert, yet tested me these 10 times and did not listen to my voice. We will see the land I swore to the ancestors, and none of those who treated me with contempt will see it, but my servant Caleb, because he had a different spirit with him and has fully followed me. Him I will bring into the land, and it will belong to his descendants. But at the beginning of this passage, we have this, verse 21, as sure as I live, and that the whole earth is filled with the glory of Adonai. As sure as I live. When does Adonai need to swear? When does Adonai need to swear by himself, as surely as I live, as he says here? He says this when he will most assuredly do it. That this is going to be accomplished this way. This will be done. This is how it's going to be done. And there is a sense in which that's kind of a very drastic statement to stay at the end of things here. So that concludes our study today. I appreciate you taking the time to study with us. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you would like to join our services this Shabbat, we'd love to have you. If you're curious or have any questions, please reach out to us and give us a call. And may Adonai bless you and keep you for the balance of the week. And we will see you on Shabbat. Shalom, shalom.